Borders and MISA to try and help and support local government through these very data-intensive or data-driven projects or applications. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lubabalo. Thank you as well to Kutlano. I think key to both your presentations was how do we activate these enablers, because these enablers we should be able to engage them and accommodate them within our institutions so we can drive this digital advance. We're going to open up now for questions. I haven't seen any questions yet on our chat group. So I'm going to open up for live questions. You can raise your hand. I think there is a raise hand feature. If you go to reactions, you will see there is a raise hand function there. So anyone, we are opening up for comments or questions. You are welcome to do so now. Okay, if there's no questions, it's just an indication that our presenters did extremely well.
Chair, if I may, I did try to raise my hand, but I am a bit challenged. It's Mwandama speaking. If yes, I can have one question.
Yes, you may continue.
I was interested in the last speaker's study that he made with regard to the Wild Coast corridor. And the reason why I am interested in that is because we are also, from Kuha point of view, we are developing the Wild Coast Special Economic Zone. So I wanted to find out what kind of work was it, and whether the data that was gleaned out of it actually can be shared with us. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mawasha. I'm going to give back to Lubabalo.
Thanks, Chair. So yeah, no, thanks for that, Mr. Mawasha. The work definitely can be shared, and I think we'll just have to engage offline on it. I know there's actually something set up tomorrow with the province to try and take some of that work forward. So we'll pick it up there. But really, at this stage, it was just let's call it conceptual visioning to say, in terms of the integrated urban development framework, what would underpin a smart green city. In terms of the concepts of resilience and being climate smart. If you were to start from scratch, what should you consider and how would you do it right the first time around? And also obviously an assessment of the infrastructure that exists in the area so that we know where to start off with and what is actually there. And then the other work really was just modeling the options from the perspective of the youth and our prospective engineers. What would future infrastructure in that place look like? Without trying to create another, let's call it Cape Town or a Singapore, but a truly African city. What would that actually really look like if we started from scratch? So it's more conceptual work in that regard, but I think we can engage offline and see how we take that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Lubabalo.
Can I come with a question? It's Nobashe from Gizana.
Yes, you may.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Thank you so much to SALGA and partners for the platform. I have two questions. One is on the enhancing fourth industrial revolution and smart governance. I want to know, I've heard the presenter asking a very personal question, which is right, but what does it mean, the role of ICT on the rural community household, more especially that with our partners we've learned for the vulnerable that we see that who are going industrial, where are they left in terms of service delivery and the shared information? While we know the issue of ICT is still the challenge even within the government, how will the gap be? How they look with the gap between the communities and the services? And the other one, I want to go to one that was very interesting, evaluation of service delivery and budget implementation plan in 257 million. I'd like to know if that can be shared, because really that one, it is the data that it needs to be shared amongst all spheres of government. Does this tool really addresses the service of delivery at the core of the vulnerables to the one, or is it just a compliance when they were synthesizing, looking at the data? What do they found? Because at least you try to see some gaps while you are working on the data. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nobafli. I think the question is probably raised to both presenters. I don't know who's going to tackle the first question. The second question was more around funding and how do we secure funding for rural municipalities. But yes, I don't know who's going to go first. Kutlano, would you like to go first? Kutlano. Okay, I'm not sure if he's still available. Lubabalo?
Thanks, Chair. I'll tackle the second one, and I'll leave the first one for my esteemed colleague. I think on the second one, yeah, we can definitely engage on that. I think, as I said, the point here is that, and what's frustrating, I mean, we never want to air our dirty laundry as a country, but our discussions typically, and oftentimes even on issues of policy, are actually not evidence-based. So the first thing that we found with these service delivery budget implementation plans is that, I think, as everyone knows, municipalities are asked for thousands of documents and thousands of data points that no one ever actually even bothers to look at or even give them feedback on. So most of the documents were not actually really useful, and they were not actually strategic. And to be honest, I think in the current form, in terms of how service delivery budget implementation plans are being used generally, it's not a strategic enabler for any sort of development anywhere, really. I think the metros perhaps might be a slight exception to that specific thing. So that's what we found. But specifically, what we were actually testing was, is there alignment now in terms of measurable things? The country is often always complaining, right, that we're losing about 20 billion in non-revenue water and electricity. So we were checking, you've got a grant, call it the Water Services Infrastructure Grant, and on the electricity side, you've got another grant for efficiency and non-revenue electricity reduction and non-revenue water reduction, respectively. But when you actually go look at the service delivery budget implementation plans, in most municipalities, it's actually something that's not reflected. While in the more wasteful municipalities, something that's not reflected. And so the question we were asking then was, what is efficiency, and why do we not take it seriously as a country? But in general, what we found was that, yeah, the service delivery budget implementation plans are a compliance mechanism that's in many instances just focused on eradication of backlogs and counting things that are countable, not really the development of communities or municipalities in general. So when you talk about things like resilience and adaptation, we are very far from that in our service delivery budget implementation plans. And lastly, Chair, as you know, if it's not budgeted for, if it's not monitored, if it's not measured, it's not going to happen. So perhaps a discussion that we need to have in South Africa as officials and the public is, how do we start to get those conversations happening by putting them in these really strategic and important documents, such that these conversations are brought to the fore? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Lubabalo. I'm not sure if Kutlano, are you back?
Yes, I'm back, Chair. I think I did get most of the question, especially in terms of how do we sort of accelerate and bring in the marginalized poor rural communities in terms of rendering services through digitalization. I think one main area speaks about infrastructure. So in the other nice diagram that I shared, when I spoke about infrastructure, is that core to all the downstream services and systems that we use is having a reliable connectivity. And one key area that we want to really prioritize as SALGA as well is the rollout of broadband infrastructure and ensuring that we especially through things like the spectrum that's being auctioned, like through ICASA, that we find a way to participate and allow municipalities to participate, to accelerate access to telecoms, internet connectivity, because a lot of systems that underpin some of the delivery are dependent on access to basic things like internet as well. So I think in terms of engagement, bringing the citizens to the fore, to access their services, to know what's happening, for maybe more poorer municipalities to access better systems, is that improve their telecoms. They don't need to have anything else on their premises, because then all other systems can actually be hosted in the cloud, so that at least the only thing we have to worry about is anything that's more about housing or health and so forth. But at least at a very basic level, from a digital point of view, from a digital lens, is actually prioritizing access to telecommunications, or at least to broadband infrastructure, which I think doesn't need necessarily any physical cabling to be installed. Or you can look at things that are more wireless internet and so forth. So I think, if anything, we should prioritize broadband and the rollout of telecom infrastructure.